Commander Park Hyun-soo stared at the holographic display floating above his desk and felt his stomach drop. The red dots on the star map looked like a disease spreading across the galaxy. Each dot represented a dead solar system, consumed by something the other alien species called the Void Swarm. The swarm moved through space like hungry locusts, eating planets and stars before moving on to the next meal. Hyun-soo rubbed his tired eyes and looked around the small meeting room on Luna Station. 50 years ago, humans had been alone on Earth, dreaming about meeting aliens. Now they sat at the big table with 12 other species in the Galactic Federation, but they were still treated like children who had just learned to walk. The door opened and Dr. Kim Sora walked in, carrying a tablet and wearing the same worried expression that everyone had these days. She had been Hyun-soo's rival at the academy 20 years ago, always getting better grades and making him work harder. Now she was the smartest physicist he knew, and he needed her brain more than ever. The council meeting was a disaster, Sora said, dropping into a chair. The Veltari are building crystal shield networks around their home systems. The Nethmori are working on some kind of phase shift technology that will make their planets invisible. The Korthak are mass-producing automated defense fleets with millions of robot ships. And what did they give humanity to do? Hyun-soo asked, though he already knew the answer would make him angry. Support logistics, Sora said with a bitter laugh. Admiral Lee Taemin tried to argue for a bigger role, but they basically told us to stay out of the way and help carry supplies. Hyun-soo stood up and paced to the window, looking out at Earth floating in the distance. His home planet looked so peaceful and blue, with white clouds swirling over the continents. It was hard to believe that in 10 years, if the Federation failed, Earth would be nothing but dead rock floating in space. 50 years in the Federation and they still think we are primitives who just discovered fire, Hyun-soo muttered. They forget that we built machines that could think before we ever met them. They forget that human engineers solve problems that other species said were impossible. The door opened again, and Admiral Lee Tae-min walked in, his military uniform crisp and his face grim. Behind him came Nam Jin-woo, a young engineer who looked barely old enough to drink alcohol but could calculate structural stress in his head faster than most computers. I assume Dr. Kim told you about the council meeting, Admiral Lee said, taking a seat at the head of the table. The other species have made it clear that humanity's role in the defense will be minimal. With respect, Admiral, Hyun-soo said, I think they are making a mistake. The Void Swarm has destroyed civilizations that were older and more advanced than any Federation member. Crystal shields and invisible planets did not save them. Robot fleets did not save them. Maybe it is time to try something completely different. Admiral Lee raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind, Commander? Hyun-soo walked back to his desk and activated a different holographic display. The image that appeared made everyone in the room go silent. It showed a massive structure floating in space, roughly spherical, with a surface covered in weapons and armor plating. Numbers floated beside the image, showing dimensions that seemed impossible. This is what I have been working on in my spare time, Hyun-soo said. A warship the size of Earth's moon, powered by an artificial star armed with weapons that could crack a planet in half. Jin-woo leaned forward, his eyes wide. Commander, the structural requirements alone would be beyond anything we have ever built. The materials needed would strip mine entire asteroid belts. The power systems would require technology we do not possess. All problems that can be solved, Hyun-soo replied. The question is whether we have the courage to try. Sora stood up and walked around the hologram, studying it from every angle. The physics are theoretically possible, but barely. We would need to break several fundamental engineering principles. The gravitational field of something this massive would disrupt nearby space. The weapons would generate enough heat to melt the ship itself. The power requirements would drain a star in months. Then we make it work anyway, Hyun-soo said firmly. This is what humans do. Other species see a problem and calculate the safe solution. We see a problem and build something so outrageous that it should not work but does anyway. Admiral Lee was quiet for a long moment, studying the hologram. Commander, what you are proposing would violate dozens of Federation treaties. Ships above a certain size are banned. Weapons of this magnitude are forbidden. If we built this in secret and were discovered, humanity could be expelled from the Federation. If we do nothing, there will be no Federation left to expel us from, Hyun-Soo replied. Admiral, I have studied every engagement between the Void Swarm and other civilizations. Conventional tactics fail every time. Traditional weapons are useless, the Swarm adapts to every defense. We need something so unprecedented that even the Swarm cannot predict it. Jin-Woo was furiously calculating on his tablet. If we started immediately, we might be able to complete construction in 18 months. That would give us 8 years to test and refine the systems before the Swarm arrives. But we would need to hide the construction from Federation sensors. The outer solar system, Sora said suddenly. Beyond Neptune, where the ice and debris would hide construction activity. We could build in the shadow of Pluto and use asteroids as raw materials. Admiral Lee stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. What you are proposing is madness. A ship the size of a moon, weapons that could destroy worlds, power systems that bend the laws of physics. If we succeed, we create something that could threaten every civilization in the galaxy. If we fail, we waste resources that could be used for conventional defenses. Admiral, Hyun-Soo said quietly, humanity has always succeeded by attempting the impossible. We flew when everyone said it could not be done. We went to space when others said we never would. We built thinking machines when other species said only living minds could reason. This is who we are. The room fell silent. Outside the window, Earth continued its ancient rotation, unaware that its fate was being decided in a small meeting room on the moon. Finally, Admiral Lee turned back to face the group. If we do this, it stays completely secret until we have no choice but to reveal it. Federation law requires disclosure of major weapons development within 18 months. That gives us exactly that long to build something that works well enough to test. Sora nodded. I can handle the theoretical physics. The gravitational manipulation alone will require new mathematics, but it is possible. Jin-Woo looked up from his calculations. I can design the structural framework. It will require materials science advances, but human metallurgy has always been our strength. I will handle the political side, Admiral Lee said. If this goes wrong, I will take full responsibility. But if it goes right, it might save not just humanity, but every civilized species in the galaxy. Hyun-Soo looked around the room at his team, feeling a mixture of excitement and terror. They were about to attempt something that violated everything they knew about safe engineering practices. They were going to build a weapon so powerful it could threaten worlds, so massive it would bend space around itself, so complex that no one fully understood how it would work. Then we start tomorrow, Hyun-Soo said. We have 18 months to build the impossible. As the meeting ended and the others filed out, Hyun-Soo remained alone with the hologram of his impossible ship. He thought about all the things that could go wrong, all the ways this could destroy everything he cared about. Then he thought about the red dots on the star map, spreading like a plague across the galaxy. Sometimes impossible was the only option left. 6 months into the project, Ominji discovered that everything they thought they knew about physics was wrong. She sat in her laboratory deep inside the secret construction facility beyond Pluto, surrounded by holographic equations that twisted through the air like glowing snakes. The mathematics hurt her brain, but they also promised something incredible. Hyun-Soo, you need to see this, Minji called out, her voice echoing in the vast chamber where the skeleton of their impossible ship was taking shape. Hyun-Soo floated over using his gravity boots, followed by Sora and the newest member of their team, Dr. Shin Ye-jin. Ye-jin specialized in alien technology and had been stealing ideas from other Federation species for months, though she preferred to call it creative borrowing. What did you find? Hyun-Soo asked, looking at the swirling equations that made his eyes water. The reason nobody has ever built ships this large, Minji said excitedly. It is not just about materials or power. At this scale, the ship creates its own gravitational field so strong that normal physics breaks down. But instead of being a problem, we can use it as a solution. She gestured and the equations rearranged themselves into a new pattern. If we place gravitational manipulation generators throughout the ship's structure, we can create pockets of compressed space. Imagine a room that is bigger on the inside than the outside. We can fit weapons, engines, and crew quarters that should be impossible to contain. Sora studied the mathematics with growing excitement. Pocket dimensions within the ship's hull. Theoretically brilliant but practically insane. The power requirements alone would drain our artificial star in hours. Not if we tap into the ship's own gravitational field as a power source, Minji replied. The ship becomes its own battery, feeding on the space distortion it creates. From across the chamber came the sound of metal being torn apart. Captain. Yoon Dong-hyuk was testing another prototype thruster system, and like the previous dozen attempts, it had just exploded spectacularly. Dong-hyuk himself came floating over, his face covered in soot but grinning like a madman. The good news is that we are getting more power output with each test, Dong-hyuk reported. The bad news is that we are also getting more explosions. At this rate, we will either achieve faster than light propulsion for massive objects, or accidentally create a black hole. Both would be impressive achievements, Hyun-soo said dryly. How close are we to a stable test? Give me another week, and I promise you will either have working engines or a very big crater where Pluto used to be. Yejin cleared her throat. Speaking of potentially dangerous experiments, I have some updates on our borrowed technology program. The Veltari crystal matrices are adapting well to human engineering principles. Their energy-focusing systems will allow us to create beam weapons of unprecedented power. Define unprecedented, Sora asked. Each main gun will output roughly the same energy as a medium-sized star-going supernova, but focused into a beam narrow enough to thread through a needle at 50,000 kilometers. Everyone stared at her in silence. Finally, Hyun-soo asked, "And the ship will survive firing these weapons?" "That is still being determined," Yejin admitted. "The test firing on our first prototype will either prove the concept or scatter our atoms across several star systems." Jinwoo floated over from where he had been working on structural calculations. The young engineer looked like he had not slept in weeks, but his eyes were bright with excitement and terror. "I have been running stress analysis on the ship's framework with the new gravitational field equations. The results are disturbing and amazing." He activated his own holographic display, showing a cross-section of their ship's internal structure. The gravitational manipulation fields will allow us to compress matter without atomic collapse. We can make the ship's armor denser than neutron star material while keeping it flexible enough to withstand impacts. But there is a side effect. "What kind of side effect?" Hyun-soo asked, though he was beginning to dread the answer. "The ship will be nearly impossible to control using conventional methods. The gravitational fields will interfere with all standard navigation systems. Piloting this vessel will be like trying to steer a planet while riding a lightning bolt during an earthquake." Dong-hyuk laughed. "Sounds like my kind of flying." "It gets worse," Jinwoo continued. "The ship's gravitational field will disrupt space around it for thousands of kilometers. Any smaller vessels nearby will be pulled in or torn apart. We cannot operate near Allied forces without destroying them accidentally." Sora was studying the structural diagrams with a worried expression. "This is not a ship in any traditional sense. It is more like a mobile gravitational anomaly that happens to carry weapons. Which brings us to our next problem," Minji said. "I have been working with the quantum mechanics of our pocket dimension technology. The spaces inside the ship exist, partially outside normal reality. Crew members working in these areas will experience time dilation, spatial distortion, and what I can only describe as physics-optional zones." Hyun-soo felt a headache building behind his eyes. "Explain that, in terms a simple engineer can understand." "Parts of our ship will not obey the normal rules of cause and effect. A crew member might press a button and have the action occur 5 minutes before they actually pressed it, or they might walk through a door and arrive somewhere they never intended to go, or they might experience gravity that points in 14 different directions simultaneously. That sounds like it would make the ship impossible to operate," Sora observed. "Not impossible," Minji said. "Just very, very difficult. We would need crew members who can think in non-linear patterns and adapt to constantly changing physical laws." Yejin nodded. "Actually, that gives me an idea about our next borrowing expedition. The Nethmori have phase shift generators that might help stabilize our pocket dimensions. Of course, acquiring them would require breaking into one of their most secure facilities. How secure? Hyun-soo asked. The kind of secure where they have defenses specifically designed to stop creatures who can walk through walls and exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dong-hyuk cracked his knuckles. Challenge accepted. Over the following weeks, their impossible project took shape in ways that defied common sense. The ship's frame grew like a metallic moon, its surface covered with gravitational manipulation, nodes that warped light around them. Inside, the pocket dimensions created spaces that hurt to look at directly, rooms where up and down were suggestions rather than facts. The first major test came when they activated the artificial star that would power their creation. Minji had designed a fusion reaction contained within compressed space, creating a star no larger than a basketball that burned with the intensity of Earth's sun. The activation process required precise timing, exotic matter, and what Minji cheerfully called a complete disregard for safety protocols. Everyone to minimum safe distance, Hyun-soo ordered. Though they all knew that if something went wrong, there was no safe distance in the solar system. Minji initiated the sequence from a control room that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. The artificial star ignited with a flash of light that was visible through closed eyelids and solid walls. For a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Then their impossible ship came alive. Lights flickered on throughout its massive structure. Gravitational fields stabilized into something resembling normal operation, and the pocket dimensions settled into configurations that only violated physics in predictable ways. Power output is stable, Sora reported, her voice filled with amazement. We have successfully created a controlled stellar reaction in a space no larger than a closet. Gravitational fields are within acceptable parameters, Jinwoo added, by which I mean they are only bending space-time instead of tearing holes in reality. Dong-hyuk was already strapping himself into the pilot's chair of their test vehicle, ready to attempt the first maneuvering test. If this works, we will have successfully made a moon-sized object capable of faster-than-light travel. If it does not work, we will have created the galaxy's most expensive fireworks display. Proceed with the test, Hyun-soo ordered, though. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Dong-hyuk engaged the engines. Reality twisted, space folded, and their impossible ship moved. Not smoothly, not gracefully, but it moved. For the first time in galactic history, an object the size of a planet had achieved controlled faster-than-light travel. It also nearly destroyed Jupiter's moon Europa in the process, as the ship's gravitational wake tore chunks of ice the size of mountains from the moon's surface. But it worked. We have done it, Hyun-soo said quietly, staring at their creation. We have built something that should not exist. Now we just need to figure out how to control it, Sora added. And how? To fight with it, Yejin said. And how to survive using it, Minji concluded. Dong-hyuk was still grinning in his pilot's chair, despite the fact that the test flight had left him nauseated and temporarily convinced that colors had sounds. Details. We can work out the details later. Looking at their impossible ship floating in space like a second moon, Hyun-soo realized they had created something that was equal parts miracle and catastrophe. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called at 0300 Standard Time, which meant something had gone very wrong or very right. Ambassador Cho Yoon-young sat at the human delegation table, trying to look calm while her world fell apart around her. The massive chamber on Council Station buzzed with angry alien voices in a dozen different languages. Order, order. The Veltari Council speaker's crystalline voice cut through the noise like a blade. We are here because our long-range sensors have detected an impossible object in the Sol system, an object that violates Federation law, physics, and common sense. The main holographic display activated, showing a sensor reading that made Yoon-young's stomach clench. There was Terra's fury in all its impossible glory, a moon-sized warship that humanity had spent 18 months building in secret. The gravitational distortions around it created patterns on the display that hurt to look at directly. The humans have constructed a weapons platform of unprecedented size and power, the Veltari speaker continued. This violates the megalithic weapons ban, the gravitational disruption treaty, and approximately 47 other agreements that humanity signed upon joining the Federation. General Bak Sung-ho leaned over to whisper in Eun-young's ear. "How bad is this going to get?" "Scale of 1 to 10, Eun-young whispered back. "About 15. The Nethmori representative flickered into partial visibility, their gaseous form shifting colors to indicate extreme agitation. "This weapon could destabilize entire star systems. The gravitational anomalies alone pose a threat to every inhabited world within 50 light-years. Furthermore," added the Korthak delegate in their mechanical voice, "our analysis indicates that this vessel carries weapons capable of planetary destruction. Such armaments are specifically forbidden under the Civilization Protection Accords." Eun-young stood up, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether humanity remained in the Federation or became galactic outcasts. "Honored delegates, I request permission to explain our actions." "Explain?" The Veltari speaker's crystalline form flared brighter. "You have secretly constructed a weapon of mass destruction while pretending to work on support logistics. What possible explanation could justify this deception?" "The truth," Eun-young said simply. "We built Terra's Fury because we believe conventional Federation defenses will fail against the Void Swarm." The chamber erupted in angry voices. The Nethmori representative solidified enough to slam a pseudopod against their speaking podium. "Are you suggesting that our combined defensive strategies are inadequate?" "I am suggesting that the Void Swarm has destroyed civilizations more advanced than any Federation member," Eun-young replied. "Their standard tactics include adaptable, biomechanical entities, gravitational manipulation weapons, and the ability to consume entire star systems for energy. Crystal shields, phase shift technology, and automated fleets have all failed against them before, so you decided to build something even more dangerous?" The Korthak delegate's optical sensors focused on Eun-young with mechanical precision. "Your weapon could threaten every world in the galaxy. Our weapon could save every world in the galaxy," General Bayek interjected, standing beside Eun-young. "With respect to our allies, humanity has a different approach to impossible problems." The debate might have continued for hours, but the DR emergency alarm suddenly activated throughout the station. The main display shifted to show incoming sensor data from the Outer Rim territories. The readings made everyone in the chamber go silent. "Advanced Void Swarm scouts have been detected in the Kepler 442 system," the station's AI announced. "Estimated arrival at the Outer Rim colonies in 72 hours. All defensive forces are being mobilized immediately." The Veltari speakers' crystalline form dimmed. "They are early. Our intelligence indicated we had 6 more months to prepare." "Perhaps they detected our defensive preparations," the Nethmori representative suggested. "Or perhaps our estimates were simply wrong." "General." Beck activated his personal communication device. "All human forces implement Protocol Omega. Terra's Fury is to proceed to Kepler 442 immediately." "You cannot deploy that weapon without Council approval," the Korthak delegate protested. "Watch us," General Bayek replied. The next few hours were chaos. Emergency protocols activated throughout Federation space as military forces scrambled to intercept the Void Swarm scouts. The Veltari crystal shield networks were only half complete. The Nethmori phase shift generators were still in testing. The Korthak automated fleets were being rushed into service without full system checks. Engineer Han Subin worked frantically to complete the second planet-sized warship, Sol's Wrath, but it would not be ready for weeks. Terra's Fury would have to face the scouts alone, supported by whatever conventional forces could reach the battle zone in time. Eun-young found herself in the Federation war room, watching as their impossible ship approached the Kepler 442 system. The displays showed Terra's Fury's gravitational field disrupting space around it, creating distortions that made nearby asteroids dance in impossible orbits. "Our sensors cannot get clear readings on the Void Scouts," reported the tactical officer. "The interference from Terra's Fury is affecting all nearby equipment." "That might actually be an advantage," General Bayek observed. "If we cannot scan them clearly, they probably cannot scan us either." The first engagement began 12 hours later. The Void Scouts emerged from hyperspace like metal sharks, their biomechanical forms bristling with weapons that defied easy classification. Each scout was roughly the size of a space station, covered in armor that seemed to shift and adapt in real time. The Federation's conventional forces engaged first. Veltari crystal ships fired focused energy beams that should have cut through any known material. The beams struck the Void Scouts and were absorbed, their energy somehow converted into additional armor plating. The Nethmori phase-shift destroyers tried to attack from multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Void Scouts simply extended tendrils into the same dimensional spaces, dragging the phase-shifted ships back into normal reality before tearing them apart. The Korthak automated fleets swarmed the Scouts with thousands of robot fighters, each one programmed with centuries of tactical knowledge. The Scouts released clouds of microscopic machines that infected the automated ships, turning them against each other in minutes. All conventional forces are falling back, the tactical officer reported. Casualties are approaching 60%. On the main display, Terra's Fury continued its approach. The massive warship moved with ponderous grace, its artificial star burning like a second sun in the darkness of space. As it drew closer to the Void Scouts, strange things began to happen. Space itself seemed to ripple around the human ship. The Scouts' adaptive armor began to malfunction, unable to compensate for the gravitational distortions. Their weapons, designed to function in normal space-time, fired wildly as the fundamental laws of physics became suggestions rather than rules. Terra's Fury is entering weapons range, reported the communications officer. Commander Park Hyun-soo is requesting permission to open fire. Permission granted, General Bayek said immediately. The first shot from Terra's Fury lit up half the C star system. The focused energy beam, powered by an artificial star and enhanced with Veltari crystal technology, struck the lead Void Scout with the force of a supernova compressed into a needle-thin line. The Scout simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that not even atomic particles remained. The remaining Scouts adapted immediately, their armor shifting to reflect energy weapons. They returned fire with weapons that bent space-time, creating gravitational eddies designed to tear apart any conventional vessel. Terra's Fury absorbed the attack without noticeable damage. Its gravitational manipulation fields treated the Scouts' exotic weapons like minor inconveniences, redirecting the energy into its own defensive systems. How is that possible? The Veltari speaker asked, their crystalline form flickering with confusion. The ship is designed to operate in impossible conditions, Yoon Young explained. Attacks that would destroy normal vessels just make it stronger. The battle continued for 6 hours. Terra's Fury moved through the Void Scouts like a predator. Among prey, its weapons reducing enemy vessels to clouds of ionized gas while its defensive systems turned their attacks into additional power. By the end, 17 Void Scouts had been completely destroyed. But the victory came at a cost. Terra's Fury's systems were pushed far beyond safe operational limits. Hull breaches appeared along its massive structure. The artificial star flickered as power fluctuations cascaded through the ship's exotic systems. Terra's Fury is reporting severe damage to multiple systems, the communications officer announced. They are requesting immediate repair support. Damage report from Commander Park, General Bayek read from his display. Quote, "We won, but we nearly broke physics doing it. The ship held together, but barely. We need to redesign everything if we expect to survive more than one battle." End quote. The Federation delegates stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. The human weapon had succeeded where all their conventional forces had failed, but it had also proven to be barely controllable. Your ship violated several fundamental laws of physics during that engagement, the Korthak delegate observed. Fleet Commander Kang Ji-hoon had commanded destroyers, battleships, and even small space stations, but nothing had prepared him for taking control of Terra's Fury. The command deck existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. The gravitational fields made his inner ear constantly confused about which direction was up, and half the controls operated on principles that violated everything he had learned at the academy. "Status report," Ji-hoon called out, though his voice echoed strangely in the pocket dimension bridge. "All weapon systems are operational. reported Tactical Officer Lim Jae-sung, whose station appeared to be floating upside down relative to everyone else. Main cannons are charged and ready, though the targeting computers are still arguing with the navigation systems about which direction is forward. Dr. Park Mi-young looked up from her repair station, where she had been working, for 36 hours straight. Hull integrity is holding at 87%. The damage from our last engagement has been mostly repaired, but I would not recommend any aggressive maneuvers until we finish reinforcing the structural support framework. Define aggressive maneuvers, Ji-hoon asked. Anything involving movement, acceleration, or existing in normal space-time, Mi-young replied without missing a beat. Through the observation ports, Ji-hoon could see the Kepler 442 system in all its doomed glory. The outer planets were already showing signs of void contamination, their surfaces covered with the metallic growths that preceded full consumption. The main Federation fleet hung in space around the fourth planet, looking pitifully small compared to what was coming. "Sir, we are receiving communications from Admiral Velkaris of the Veltari fleet," reported the communications officer. "She is requesting that we maintain our position at the rear of the formation." "Tell the Admiral that Terra's Fury does not do rear positions," Ji-hoon replied. "We will take point." "Sir, she is insisting that our gravitational field will disrupt their crystal shield network." "Then tell her to keep her shields away from our gravity well. We are not hiding behind formations when the fate of the galaxy is at stake." The main display activated, showing long-range sensor data that made everyone on the bridge go quiet. The Void Swarm main force was approaching like a plague of mechanical locusts, each individual entity the size of a moon or small planet. The smaller scout ships they had fought before were just tiny parasites compared to these massive biomechanical constructs. "Sensor analysis is complete," Jae-sung reported. "We are looking at approximately 3 million individual void entities, ranging in size from space station scale to planetary mass. The largest ones are generating gravitational fields comparable to brown dwarf stars." "How does that compare to our capabilities?" Ji-hoon asked. "Our weapons can destroy anything smaller than a large moon with a single shot. The planetary scale entities will require sustained bombardment. The largest ones..." Jae-sung paused, checking his calculations. "The largest ones might be able to absorb everything we can throw at them and ask for more." Mi-young's repair station chimed with new data. "I am detecting massive structural variations in the void entities. They appear to be constantly reconfiguring themselves, adapting their armor and weapons in real time. Whatever we used against the scouts will probably be useless against the main force. Then we adapt faster than they do," Ji-hoon said firmly. "This is what Terra's Fury was designed for. Impossible battles against impossible enemies using impossible tactics." The first wave of void entities entered the system 12 hours later. They moved in formations that hurt to look at directly, their biomechanical hulls shifting and flowing like liquid metal. As they approached the Federation defense line, they began to change, their surfaces reconfiguring into weapon configurations that defied easy classification. "All Federation forces are engaging," the communications officer reported. "The Veltari crystal networks are firing coordinated energy bursts. The Nethmori are attempting phase shift attacks from multiple dimensions. The Korthak automated fleets are swarming the enemy flanks." Ji-hoon watched the tactical display as the battle began. The Federation forces fought with courage and skill, their weapons lighting up space with brilliant flashes. For the first few minutes it looked like they might actually hold the line. Then the void entities adapted. The crystal energy bursts struck void armor that had reconfigured to absorb and redirect the beams back at their sources. Phase shift attacks found that the entities had somehow extended their presence into the same dimensional spaces, turning the Nethmori's advantage into a liability. The automated swarm tactics were countered by void entities that split apart into smaller components, creating their own swarms that were faster and more coordinated. "Federation casualties are mounting rapidly," Jae-sung reported. "The Veltari have lost 60% of their crystal ships. The Nethmori phase fleet is down to 30% operational capacity. The Korthak automated forces are being turned against each other by some kind of viral programming." "Time to engage," Ji-hoon decided. "All stations, Prepare for combat. Helm, take us into the center of the enemy formation. Sir, that will put us in direct contact with approximately 50,000 void entities, the helmsman protested. Good. Give them something to really worry about. Terra's fury began to move, its massive bulk accelerating with ponderous grace. As the planet-sized warship approached the battle, strange things began to happen. The gravitational fields generated by its exotic engines created ripples in space-time that disrupted void coordination protocols. Enemy formations that had been moving in perfect synchronization suddenly found themselves fighting their own gravitational influences. Sir, the void entities are adapting to our gravitational effects, Jae-sung warned. Their formations are compensating for the spatial distortions. Then we give them something they cannot adapt to, Ji-hoon replied. All weapons, target the largest entities first. Maximum power, sustained bombardment. The first salvo from Terra's fury lit up half the star system. Dozens of Veltari-enhanced energy beams struck the largest void entities with the combined force of several supernovas. The targeted entities absorbed the energy for a few seconds, their armor adapting and reinforcing, then simply exploded as their systems overloaded. Direct hits on primary targets, Jae-sung reported with satisfaction. 17 large entities destroyed, 8 more severely damaged. But the victory was temporary. The surviving void entities immediately began adapting, their armor shifting to configurations designed specifically to counter Terra's Fury's weapons. Worse, they began concentrating their fire on the human ship, recognizing it as the primary threat. Incoming weapons fire, the tactical officer warned. Multiple exotic energy types, gravitational distortion weapons, and what appears to be directed antimatter streams. The attack struck Terra's fury like the wrath of angry gods. Normal spacetime bent and twisted around the ship as gravitational weapons tried to tear it apart. Energy beams that could melt planets scorched across its hull. Antimatter streams ate holes in reality itself. Terra's fury absorbed it all and kept fighting. How are we still intact? The helmsman asked in amazement. The ship was designed to operate in impossible conditions, Mi-young explained, her hands flying over her repair controls. Every attack just feeds more energy into our defensive systems. The gravitational weapons actually strengthen our hull integrity. The energy beams are being redirected to our weapon capacitors. Ji-hoon realized that they were fighting a different kind of battle than anyone had ever imagined. This was not ship-to-ship combat in any traditional sense. This was a mobile gravitational anomaly fighting a swarm of biomechanical constructs. In a region of space where the normal laws of physics had broken down completely. Sir, I am reading massive structural changes in the void entities, Jae-sung reported. They are combining together, forming larger composite structures. On the main display, hundreds of moon-sized void entities were merging into planetary-scale constructs, their biomechanical systems interweaving to create weapons platforms of unprecedented size and power. The largest composite entity was approaching the mass of a small planet, its surface bristling with weapons that defied classification. That thing could destroy entire star systems, Mi-young observed. Then we destroy it first, Ji-hoon decided. All power to the main cannon array. I want every weapon we have focused on that composite entity. Sir, firing all weapons simultaneously will drain our artificial star and leave us defenseless for several minutes, Jae-sung warned. Sometimes, you have to bet everything on a single shot. Terra's Fury's weapons charged with a sound like reality screaming. The artificial star at the ship's core burned brighter than it ever had before, feeding energy into weapon systems that violated several fundamental laws of physics. Space around the human warship began to glow as exotic particles leaked from the charging process. All weapons ready, Jae-sung reported. Targeting the composite entity's core structure. Fire everything. The combined weapon discharge from Terra's Fury created a brief second sun in the Kepler 442 system. Every energy beam, every exotic particle cannon, every gravitational distortion projector fired simultaneously, creating a focused assault that carried more destructive power than most stellar explosions. Chief Engineer Song Hyun-woo knew they were about to die when the artificial star started singing. The fusion reaction at Terra's Fury's core was producing harmonics that should not exist, frequencies that made the ship's hull vibrate like a massive tuning fork. He had been working in the power core chamber for 18 straight hours, trying to restore their weapon systems before the void entities overwhelmed them completely. Yunwu, we need power in the next 10 minutes or we are all going to become space dust. Captain Ryu Sujin's voice crackled through the communication system. She was coordinating evacuation procedures throughout the ship, moving non-essential personnel to the most heavily shielded sections. The artificial star is not cooperating, Yunwu replied, wiping sweat from his forehead as he worked on the exotic matter containment field. Every time I try to increase power output, the fusion reaction threatens to destabilize. If I push too hard, we will have our own supernova to worry about. Systems analyst Ko Jun-ho floated over from his monitoring station, his face pale with exhaustion and fear. Hyun-woo, I have been analyzing the ship's performance data from our previous battles. I found something that changes everything. Unless it involves instantly restoring our weapons, I do not want to hear it right now. It involves understanding why our weapons keep failing at critical moments, Jun-ho insisted. The problem is not with the power systems or the weapons themselves. The problem is with us. Hyun-woo paused in his work and looked at the young analyst. Explain that. Terra's fury is too complex for any crew to control effectively. We have weapons that operate in 17 dimensions, engines that bend space-time, and defensive systems that rewrite the laws of physics in real time. No human mind can track all the variables simultaneously. So what are you suggesting? That we give up and let the void swarm eat the galaxy? I am suggesting that we have been trying to control something that was never meant to be controlled, Jun-ho replied. Look at the performance data. Every time we try to operate the ship within safe parameters, we fail. Every time we push beyond the limits and let the systems run wild, we succeed. Hyun-woo stared at the data displays, seeing patterns that made his engineer's instincts scream in protest. You are talking about deliberately operating beyond failure thresholds. That goes against every safety protocol ever written. Every safety protocol written for normal ships operating under normal conditions, Jun-ho corrected. Terra's fury is not normal. It exists in a state of controlled catastrophe. The chaos is not a bug, it is a feature. The ship shuddered as another wave of void weapons struck their failing shields. Warning alarms echoed through the corridors as hull breaches multiplied faster than the repair teams could seal them. Whatever we are going to do, we need to do it now. Sujin's voice came through the speakers. I am reading massive energy buildups in the void entities. They are preparing for a coordinated assault that will finish us. Hyun-woo looked at the UI artificial star's control systems, then at Jun-ho's analysis, then made a decision that violated everything he had ever learned about safe engineering practices. Jun-ho, transmit your analysis to the bridge. Tell Commander Kang that we are going to try something completely insane. More insane than building a planet-sized warship powered by an artificial star? Much more insane. We are going to stop trying to control the ship and start letting it control itself. On the bridge, Ji-hoon received Jun-ho's data transmission with a mixture of horror and fascination. The young analyst was suggesting that they abandon all safety protocols and allow Terra's fury to operate at the edge of catastrophic failure. You want us to deliberately push every system beyond its design limits? Ji-hoon asked. The data shows that our best performance occurs when we operate in crisis mode, Jae-sung reported from his tactical station. Every time we try to fight conservatively, we lose effectiveness. When we push everything to maximum and beyond, we become unstoppable. Until we explode, Mi-young pointed out from her repair station. The ship has not exploded yet, Ji-hoon observed. And given what we are facing, explosion might be preferable to surrender. The main display showed the approaching void entities, thousands of biomechanical constructs that had adapted to counter every weapon in the Federation arsenal. They moved with perfect coordination, their attack patterns designed to overwhelm Terra's Fury's defenses through sheer volume of fire. All stations implement Protocol Chaos, Ji-hoon ordered. Remove all safety limiters from weapons, engines, and defensive systems. We are going to fight this battle with everything we have, regardless of the consequences. Sir, that could destroy the ship, the helmsman warned. The ship is already being destroyed, Ji-hoon replied. At least this way, we take some enemies with us. Throughout Terra's fury, Safety systems that had never been designed to be disabled went offline. Weapons that had been carefully calibrated to operate within safe parameters suddenly had access to unlimited power. Engines that had been restricted to prevent spatial distortions were freed to bend reality however they needed to. The artificial star at the ship's core stopped singing and started screaming, power output increasing beyond all theoretical maximums, Hyun-woo reported from the engineering section. The fusion reaction is stable, but only because we have redefined what stable means. Weapons charging to levels that should not be possible, Jae-sung announced from Tactical. Our main cannons are drawing more energy than some stars produce. Gravitational field strength increasing exponentially, the helmsman reported. Sir, we are creating spatial distortions that extend for thousands of kilometers in every direction. The void entities struck just as Terra's Fury systems reached their new, impossible operational levels. Thousands of exotic weapons fired simultaneously, creating an assault that should have reduced the human ship to its component atoms. Instead, Terra's Fury absorbed the attack and converted it into additional power. The ship's gravitational field had become so intense that incoming energy was compressed and redirected to the weapon systems. The void entities found themselves facing a target that became stronger every time they attacked it. Return fire all weapons, Ji-hoon ordered. Terra's Fury's response was beyond anything anyone had imagined possible. The ship's weapons fired with the force of colliding galaxies, creating energy beams that lit up the entire star system. Each shot carried enough power to sterilize planets, focused into streams narrow enough to thread through atomic spaces. The void entities tried to adapt, their biomechanical systems reconfiguring desperately to counter the impossible assault. But Terra's Fury was no longer fighting according to any predictable pattern. The ship's systems were operating in a state of barely controlled chaos, creating weapon effects that violated different laws of physics with each shot. Sir, I am reading massive structural failures throughout the ship, Mi-young reported. Hull breaches on every deck, power conduits overloading, gravitational field generators operating at 300% of design capacity. Are we going to explode? Ji-hoon asked. Probably, but not in the next few minutes. Then we keep fighting. The battle continued with Terra's Fury operating like a force of nature rather than a constructed vessel. The ship moved through space, trailing gravitational distortions that tore apart smaller void entities simply by passing near them. Its weapons fired in patterns that seemed random, but somehow always found their targets. Sir, the void entities are retreating, Jae-sung reported with amazement. They cannot adapt to our attack patterns because we do not have attack patterns. We are operating beyond prediction. Pursuing enemy forces, the helmsman announced. Though I should mention that our navigation systems are no longer certain which direction is forward. Does it matter? Not really. The ship seems to know where it wants to go. Sol's Wrath arrived in the middle of the chaos, its own impossible bulk adding to the gravitational confusion. Commander Subin immediately implemented the same protocol chaos that Terra's Fury was using, pushing her ship beyond all safe operational limits. Together, the two planet-sized warships created a zone of controlled catastrophe that the Void Swarm simply could not comprehend. Their biomechanical systems, designed to adapt to any threat, found themselves facing weapons that operated beyond adaptation, defensive systems that redefined physics with each attack, and gravitational fields that turned space itself into a weapon. The void entities, faced with enemies that fought by breaking reality, made a decision that no one had expected. They retreated. Sir, we are receiving a communication from the Void Swarm, the communications officer reported. It appears to be some kind of withdrawal signal. They are leaving? Ji-hoon asked in amazement. Not just leaving. They are marking this entire region of space as unsuitable for consumption. According to our translation protocols, they consider us too dangerous to approach. Hours later, as both human ships limped back toward Federation space trailing debris and gravitational anomalies, Ji-hoon sat in his command chair and tried to understand what had happened. They had won, but not through superior tactics or advanced technology. They had won by embracing chaos, by operating beyond the edge of catastrophic failure, by building weapons that worked best when they were barely working at all.